Hi, I'm Eileen Field. I'm with Hotel Talk, and I'm excited today to have on my show Frank Zaccari. He's a co-contributor for the book Crappy to Happy, Sacred Stories of Transformational Joy. Hi, Frank. How are you?
It's wonderful. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. So Frank has published 5 books on life-altering events. He teaches at Arizona State University. He mentors veterans, is a mentor and judge at the University of California Entrepreneurship Academy, and radio host of life-altering events. And he is also a keynote speaker. So today we're going to talk to Frank about his contribution to the Crappy to Happy book and the life-altering event that his family experienced that really no family would want to have to experience. So Frank, I'm going to let you take it from here and tell us what began that part of your life where you had an altering experience.
Well, thank you first for having me on. The life-altering experience, this changed my entire family. This was devastating. My youngest brother, who I think was 23 or 24 at the time, had just gotten engaged on a Friday, and he was a troubleshooter for an organization called the Ames Department Store. People in the Northeast know who Ames is. They wanted to be Walmart before there was a Walmart, right? And so he would go to a store, he would remodel it, he'd do whatever needed to be done, and then he would come back to his base, which was in Delhi, New York, which is 2 hours from Syracuse. I don't know how many people are familiar with New York State, but Syracuse is like 2 hours from everywhere, and Delhi is 2 hours from Syracuse. So the joke in Delhi was, it's not the end of the earth, but you can see it from there.
Got it.
So my brother got engaged on a Friday. On Sunday, he was driving to what was going to be his last remodel with Ames because he had just accepted a job with Marshalls, and he was going to be able to move back to the Buffalo area as a manager, which is where we grew up, in Buffalo, New York area. So he's driving to the place, to the location, and I don't know what time it was at night, maybe 11 o'clock at night. I get a phone call, and it's one of my sisters who's crying hysterically. Mm-hmm. And she's trying to tell me, Steve, something happened, and I'm more the blunt one in the family, so I just said, is he dead? And then she sort of caught herself, and she said, no, he's not dead, but he's hurt. He's hurt badly. So I said, okay, where is he? They gave me the name of the hospital, the name of the doctor. I was a medic in the military near the end of the Vietnam War, so I said, I'm going to call the hospital myself. So I called to this hospital outside of Philadelphia and spoke directly to the doctor. And I said, I told him who I was, and I said, what's going on here? Because I tend to be very direct. So he said, well, your brother is hurt. We're looking at his x-ray. We can't see C7, cervical vertebrae 7. There's 7 cervical vertebrae at the top of your neck, right? He says, we can't see number 7 right now. We're going to go a little bit deeper. He's in a lot of pain. He can't move from his mid-chest here down at the moment. Okay, now being a medic and having seen some pretty hellacious trauma in my life, I thought, well, it could be a lot of things. It could be shock that's preventing him from moving at this point. It just could be the excessive pain that's causing it. We don't know at this point. So I said to the doctor, okay, what else? What are we going to do here? And are you a surgical spine specialty hospital? And he said, no, we're not. However, Thomas Jefferson Hospital in Philadelphia, which is about an hour away, is, and we're going to take him there to transfer him sometime tonight to Thomas Jefferson Hospital. Now, what was happening is he was driving, and in the Northeast, they have these clover leaves as you get on and off freeways and what have you. So he's driving, he's starting to get on a clover leaf, it's starting to rain. He's like a maintenance truck with its lights flashing but not moving. So he starts to go around it, and there's a disabled car in front of the truck. And so he's moving around to get to one, and there it is. And so he ended up hitting that car, and then his car went end over end a few times, and then landed on the hood. So it took a little while for the ambulance to get there, and they had to cut him out and get him onto the board, and then transmit it. They took him to the closest hospital. Okay, and then the doctor there stabilized him. They sent him to Thomas Jefferson. So we get a phone call that he's on his way to Thomas Jefferson. My mother and father, old Italians, they're just beside themselves. They're not even able to cope with the conversation. When the doctors called the house, my dad answered the phone, and they were explaining to him what was going on, and he couldn't hear it. It made no sense. So he handed the phone to my sister, who happened to be home, who ran rehabilitation hospitals in New Jersey. So this is something she understood. And so she had to go from sister in shock to professional counselor within just a couple of seconds of this phone call. So we made necessary arrangements for my mom and dad to get there, my sister, and we have a very large family. They're like 400 cousins between Vermont and Washington, D.C. So they converged upon Philadelphia like a herd of locusts.
Right.
So there was a lot of people there to help. So he gets there, and it's a very serious injury, and the doctors are going to have to do surgery to try to stabilize the spine. He had a blood clot when he first got there, so that delayed the surgery until they could clear the blood clot. And then they did the surgery, and the doctors came out. I think there was 25 family members there the day of the surgery. And the doctor came out. Now they have to tell us the news. And the doctor said the surgery went as well as could be expected, and he has a C6 and C7 fracture, and it didn't sever the spinal cord, but she used an example like a piece of paper, and she said the whiplash action sort of caused it to fold over like this, so there's scarring on the spinal cord, and it's not taking, the transmissions are not going through. And then she said, then of course I say, is he going to walk? And she said, very unlikely. And once again, because I'm the blunt one in the family, while my mother's crying hysterically and I said, I understand that this injury, the life expectancy is 5 years. Is that true, yes or no? And the doctor started with, well, and I said, don't give me well, yes or no. It's a very simple question. And she said, yes, that's true. However, in other cases, etc. So now we have a situation where I think he was maybe 24. He's going to be paralyzed. He's going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life, and he might live 5 years maybe. And the devastation was just incredible. My mother and father lived at Jefferson Hospital because it's a teaching hospital, so they have dormitories. And they could stay in the dormitory for something like $10 a night or something. And so the family, put up, I don't know how much money to pay for until my mother decided she felt comfortable leaving. And they pretty much stayed there at the dormitory of the hospital. My sister Annette, the one who runs rehabilitation hospitals, walked in, and she's a specialist in head trauma, head rehabilitation, spinal cord and head. So she walks into the rehabilitation area of the hospital, and they all know who she is by name, by reputation. They know who she is. And they thought, oh my God, is she here? Did you take a job with us? And she said, no, my brother is here, and this is what we're going to do. So then my sister is basically giving them, here is the plan that we are going to go with. And then she meets with the doctor, and he tells the doctor, this is how we're going to do things, and this is what's going to be done, etc. So my brother Steve, of the five, there's five of us. My brother Steve is by far the most intelligent. He went to, we all went to state universities, right? And he went to Canisius College, the big private Jesuit school out of Buffalo, which accepts 1 out of 2,000 applicants. right? He was someone who he would have been the mayor of Buffalo or state senator or United States senator. He was just one of those kinds of people, incredibly intelligent. Everyone gravitates toward him. And now we're going to go through this. He was basically an absolute model for the hospital, because he initially it was this, oh my, am I going to die? But there was never this why me, why God, why did this happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
So I started taking him to see other patients who were having a lot of difficulty with this situation, and he would talk to them. Okay, and he'd have the halo on, and the chest thing, and he'd say, "Look, you still have your mind. We're going to get through this. It's going to be incredibly difficult, but we're going to get through this." And the whole time he would tell me all the time, "I'm walking out of here. I don't care what they said. I am walking out of here."
He had a strong will, and it sounds like he was very inspirational and empowering for other people. And did that have an impact on you, the way he was handling his situation?
It helped. We knew what he was and who he was, and that he was going to fight. And he was inspiring us more than we were inspiring him. And he's one of these guys, Eileen, that everybody who's ever met him stays in touch with him. People that he went to grade school with are still in touch with him. And he started getting letters and letters and letters. And one day I was at the hospital. I'm walking through the hospital, and one of the nurses, the physical therapist, says, "Frank, can I talk to you?" And I said, "Sure." She goes, "Okay, who is your brother?" I said, "What do you mean, who's my brother? You're with him every day." She goes, "No, who is he really?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" And they said, "Teddy Pendergrass, the singer, Teddy Pendergrass, was injured, paralyzed. He was at that hospital." And he said, "Teddy Pendergrass had got more mail than anybody ever at this point in time." And he says, "And your brother has passed that by truckloads."
Wow.
He said, "Plus, he's getting letters from people like Congressman Jack Kemp, the late Congressman Jack Kemp, Governor Mario Cuomo, the first Governor Cuomo from New York State, from Cardinal Cook, from Ron Jaworski, the football player who grew up in the Buffalo area." And he said, what's going on here?" And they said, "Well, first off, he's a very inspirational individual. He connects with everybody he's ever met. And the word got out through the Buffalo area that this had occurred." Now, he had been student of the week. He had been in the papers about receiving scholarships to Canisius College, which is a very expensive school. So he would walk in, he'd sign in for his classes, and they would give him a check because he had so many grants and scholarships and things going for him. Now, while he was at Canisius, one of the professors had said, he was like the mayor. He's always been the mayor. He's always got these people around him. One of the professors said, "We have an issue with handicap access at Canisius College. Now they have underground tunnels because you get snow in Buffalo up to your eyes. So that's how you maneuver around the campus, with these series of tunnels." And so he approached my brother, and he said to all of his friends, "We're going to do this. We're all going to get in wheelchairs. We're all going to see what the issues are, and we're going to create a manual or a book for potential handicapped students, not just physically, emotionally, blind, hearing, etc." And his classmates had said, Why are we doing their work?" And he goes, "Because we are." Mm-hmm. And they did it. They put this incredible program together. And then he would go and talk with the parents as they came in and explain how things were and how they put it together. So it was almost like what's the term I'm looking for? A foreshadowing of something to come, because he had already put that together. And then the injury came. He was in the hospital between Thomas Jefferson, and McGee Rehabilitation Hospital about 10 months. When he first got to McGee, which is about 3 blocks from Jefferson, you walk into McGee Hospital, and there's a sign, and it says, "The journey begins here." Mm-hmm. And he looked up at that and he said, "Or it ends here." One or the other. And so there was a lot of depression, obviously. And he said after the first couple of days, there were 2 gentlemen that were there, and they were both in wheelchairs and paralyzed to some degree, and they were working through the rehab and dropping things and laughing and joking with each other. And so my brother, being very observant, watched, and so he moves. He didn't have a power chair then, so he's moving with his arms on the chair to talk to these individuals. And he said, "What's going on here? What are you guys? Is this a temporary thing?" And they said, "No, no, we're permanent. But it is what it is, Steve. This is the way life is going to be. I didn't want it to happen, but it did. Now I can wallow in self-pity, or I can move forward with what's going on." And so they befriended my brother, and they became like this triumphant to led and talked with other people about how to approach this and how to go about dealing with it. And they had they were the three. Somebody new would come in, and they would send them over to see one of these three, or all three of them would come together. And there was one young woman there who had been hit by lightning. She was at the Jersey Shore. She was on a blanket with her boyfriend. Lightning, which I learned, doesn't come from the sky down; it comes from the ground up. I didn't know that.
And can travel like 30 miles.
It can travel along the ground, right? So they're on a blanket at the Jersey Shore. It starts to rain. Most people get up and leave. The two of them, however, continue to sit there, lay there. And she was touching him and had moved over to start to gather the stuff. Lightning hits, goes along the ground, kills him, leaves her paralyzed and blind. So she is at the hospital also, and she's a very classic, hardcore New Jersey young woman, and couldn't talk for a while, but her prognosis was she is ultimately going to recover from this. After the first few days, she's going to recover and come out. So she would be in a walker as they were trying to get her helpful. And this group of three, they knew what time they would do physical therapy. So they would all get in their wheelchairs and wheel over there and wait for Kelly to come out. And Kelly would insult them, and they would insult her back. And this is just your classic New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania type humor going back and forth. But it's how they kept everybody motivated.
I was going to say, it sounds like he was in a good position to use that inspiring part of him and be kind of in a leadership position and corral everybody to be motivating for others.
He was amazing. It was amazing. The most difficult thing, and he said it, and it's in the book also, but he said it many, many times, as hard as the rehabilitation and the injury was, dealing with the insurance companies was worse. Because he'd fill out hundreds of millions of forms, and you throw them, and they go in the black hole. And then it's a battle. Who's going to pay? Who's not going to pay? And one of the things that this will be my only statement on this part, but one of the things that one of them said, because I was talking to him, was, "We'll pay when a court tells us we have to pay."
That's awful.
10 months in the hospital, 10 months, leaves without a custom chair. He's in a standard wheelchair because they're still fighting over it. We had to go to court and then get in front of a judge who basically lost his mind when he heard what was going on. And within hours, orders were being put in for a renovated van, for a custom chair, and that the judge had told him, "You're going to pay his medical for the rest of his life going forward here." So that was one burden off of us, that, okay, at least we don't have to worry about the health. By the time that this had got to this point, and the insurance company had said, well, what if we give you X amount of dollars, right? And I remember saying to him, "Hey, Steve, this is almost 2 years in, and they said you're going to live 5 years. The doctor said you're going to have increased infections, you're going to have more surgeries, you're going to have all kinds of other issues that are going to occur, and they've all been happening. Now we're 2 years into this. Okay, and they want to give you X amount of dollars as a settlement. It's a good deal for them, because they're not going to give it to you in cash. They're going to put it into an annuity, and then if you don't live that long, if you do die in the next 3 years, they pocket all the money."
Right.
And of course, my brother, being my brother, said, an expletive, and he goes, "I'm going to live 50 years.
Good for him.
So we went through that. When the doctor first was telling us the extent of the injury, they said he's not going to be able to. He doesn't have any control over anything at this point. He has a catheter all the time. He's going to have help getting in and out of bed. He's going to have trouble bathroom routine, and have to have aides coming in to help him with this. He's never going to be the same. And the doctor had said you might want to consider looking at some kind of a home for him. At that point, my mother, who was just crying hysterically throughout this whole thing, stopped, and rage came in, and she glared at this doctor, and he says, he will never see the inside of a home. Mm. We will do whatever it takes. We will learn whatever it is, and we will take care of it. So that was incredibly life-altering. When he did get out of the hospital, he went back to Buffalo in his power chair and his van. And again, being in Buffalo, New York, with snow up to your eyes, not a good place to be when you're in a power chair.
Right.
But he he got his master's degree, and then he started working at State University of New York at Fredonia, which is 3 miles from my parents' house. And he was an advocate for all the construction that was being done on the campus. And so they would sit down with the contractors, and they'd look at what the plans are, and he'd say, where's the access going to be? Where's the access point? Where's the elevators going to be? If you're going to be the access point over here and the elevators over here, not going to work. You have to have the elevators near the access point. And he would lay all this stuff out. If anybody would give him a hard time, he would say, if we're going to, I'm being reasonable, but if we want to fight, I'm going to have TV cameras here. I'm going to be sitting in my wheelchair, and I'm going to be telling the world that I can't get in. Mm. So that only happened once. And after that, everybody got the, okay, he's serious. But they did all kinds of wonderful things at Fredonia State. He was involved. He had another couple of surgeries since in between. And he was driving one day, and the van sort of slid on the black ice, which is something that we have a lot in Buffalo, and it landed into a big, big snowdrift. And at that point, we said, enough, Steve. You can't stay there anymore. You can't. You have to get out. And my mother's not too thrilled about this, but he's got to leave. Now, I was living in California at the time, and I said, you can come to California, you can live with us, live with me. Or Annette, my sister who ran the rehab hospitals, had moved to Phoenix at that point in time. I said, well, you can live where Annette is. And while he was in the hospital having yet another surgery, we were having this conversation, and the neighbor next door to my sister died. Now, she's an older woman. She was like 90-some years old, and she died of natural causes. And so my sister went over and was talking to the family because she had met the woman a few times. And he said, is there anything that I can do to help you? Please let me know. And the family's from Minnesota. And they said, well, we want to get rid of this house as quickly as possible. We're from Minnesota. We don't want anything to do with Arizona. And my sister said, well, I don't want to sound like a ghoul over the grave here, but if you'll give me 48 hours, I will bet you my family will buy this house. And it was a mirror image of her house. So she got the old video cameras and the big things, and she went around and videoed, put it in the Federal Express, sent it to the hospital. I was there at the time with the rest of the family. We got one of those, remember the little TVs that had you could put the VHS into it? Yes. We brought that to the hospital, put it in, showed it to him, and said, what do you think? Now, because of the injury, they had to remodel the house for him. So they had to make it accessible. And my sister Annette knew a contractor who had the same injuries as my brother Steve, and he was going to do the work, right? And so he was going to be paid from the insurance from when the judge said you are going to do this. And then he moved to Arizona. So everybody converged now in Arizona. And again, my mother stayed there for probably close to a year. My dad went back after a couple of months because he had to go back to work. But my mother wasn't going to leave her youngest child there. And so she was screening and teaching all the aides that would be coming in on how we do what we do. And it's really incredible. And we had one of the nurses tell us this. He never had a skin breakdown except when he was in the hospital. That was the only time it happened. Other than that, the routine, my mother taught all of us, and we taught all the aides, was such that it never occurred. Now he was getting kidney infections and a number of other things that were going on that were pretty devastating. And each time you get a kidney infection, it gets worse and worse and worse. So we're going through this, and he's struggling. He's still got the great strength, but he's struggling with it. And one of the doctors had said to him, Steve, all we're doing is shuffling drugs. So we give you this set of drugs, and we see what happens, and this one impacts your kidney functions. So, okay, let's change that. And then this one impacts your liver, and then this one is doing similar to the story that you had when you had fibromyalgia, right? You just get bombarded with all these drugs.
Right.
And one doctor finally said, Steve, I'm going to send you to a holistic doctor. And they said, insurance won't pay. And he goes, you let me worry about that. I'll figure out a way to make this happen. So my brother Steve used to call that person the witch doctor. So gets with a doctor, acupuncture, changing diet, going through the whole situation. And my brother is very, very disciplined. And they said, this is what you need to eat, and this is what you need to eliminate. Okay, well, we're Italian. Okay, you're telling Italian, I can't eat bread, and I can't eat pasta. If they said that to me, I would say, just shoot me in the head right now, because I can't live. No wine. Oh, God. But my brother said, okay, we're going to do that. And so this was a few years after he had already been in Phoenix. Now, 35 years later, August 11th was the 35th year anniversary. He's probably healthier than he's been at any other time. His weight is down to where it was. He's involved. He had been involved with the Northern Phoenix Planning Commission. He's very intelligent, politically astute, and he would go to some of these talks and listen to these candidates. Well, one of the women who was running for city council impressed him, and he said, I want to donate to you and I want to work with you. And she started talking to him, and so she said, I want you on the planning commission. So for several years, he was on the North County Planning Commission, and they had asked him, why don't you run for office? And he said, I'm not even up out of bed until 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning because the routine I have to go through. So no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm not going to put that additional strain on my body. And someone asked him at that point, well, Steve, what are your goals now? And he said, I want to stay healthy, and I have to outlive my parents because I'm not going to have them go through this and then have to bury me too. So my mother died 13, 14 years ago, and my father died January 7th, just a few months back. And so I was in Phoenix last week, and I told him, okay, Steve, you got to get another set of goals. Okay, you outlived mom and dad, but now we got to get something else because we're not ready for you to cash in your chips at this point. It was so life altering in the fact that I was living in California at the time of the accident. I felt useless, so I transferred. I was in the high-tech world, so I ended up transferring to a facility in Columbia, South Carolina. So I'm an hour flight from Western New York. And we did that for about, while he was in the hospital, 2-3 years. My other brother who lived in Western New York, he changed jobs so he could be closer. I have one sister who's a nurse who lived in Western New York. She changed jobs so she had more flexibility to be around. My sister Annette stayed until she knew he was stable, and then she took the job in Arizona. And his house in Arizona, Eileen, sort of became like the Hotel West, because all the 400 cousins, I think at some point, almost all 400 of them came to visit at some point.
So I bet that town got to know your family very well.
Yeah, they did. That area of Phoenix, and they're still very engaged. He knows everybody. He's like the mayor again. We grew up Catholic. He got involved with a Franciscan that was called the Casa, and it was like a retreat place run by the Franciscans. And so he started going there, and they asked him to, would you teach high school kids, talk to them about life and where's life going and this type of stuff.
Right.
So he's been doing that for years and years. He's a fixture there. You go to an event with him at the casa, and when it's over, you just go make yourself comfortable, because it's going to be an hour or two or longer before he says goodbye to all the people that want to say goodbye to him.
Right. I have a question for you.
Sure.
So it sounds like he's very self-aware and self-empowered. So how did the accident itself and how he handled everything up to now have an impact on you, your view on your life, on life in general, and how you were handling things for yourself and watching him be so proactive in making sure that he defies the doctors, outlives the estimation of what's typical, and keep moving forward and doing whatever he needed to do to ensure that he was living a fulfilled life, regardless of the condition that he was now in. How did it have an impact on you and your life?
Well, in my case, I was a high tech. I was moving up very rapidly, and it was a big mindset change, because every little thing seemed to matter tremendously. And you're stressing out over all these little things. And I look over at my brother and what he's going through. He had to learn how to do everything all over again, including how to eat, feed himself. And I thought, okay, this stuff doesn't matter. It's not that important. I'm not going to stress out over it. I'm going to get through this. We're going to get through this. And so we had changed careers. Got into, after the high tech sector, my then wife left. She decided things weren't working. And so now I had custody of my daughters, who were young at the time. And so it was a change of career from high tech. And it was, oh my God, poor me. And I went, no, it's not poor me. Okay, what Steve went through, that's poor me. Okay, if he could get through this, I can get through this. I'm healthy. It's a change in what's going on out there. And we started to connect with people, more directly with people. Prior to that, I was this type A, hard charging, hard pushing. Like somebody said to me one time, Frank, your management style is you open the door, you throw in a grenade, and whoever comes out, you work with. And I said, no, I don't. And I said, well, yeah, you do. So I said, okay, well, we got to work on that. But at that point, you started interacting more with people at a deeper level. What is it that you're concerned about? Let's talk about what you want to accomplish, as opposed to here's a set of corporate objectives, which are arbitrary anyway. But let's see how we can work together. What makes you happy? What do you enjoy doing? And later I was told one of the things I was pretty good at was putting people in a position, the best position for them to succeed. So where before, prior accident, it would have been, I really don't care, just get it done. Post-accident.
Yeah, so this experience with your brother kind of shifted your level of compassion for others and recognizing what's going to help them enjoy their job and what they're passionate about.
Exactly, because it comes down to, what really is important, and that was the self-actualization, the actualization I had to come to is making $1 million really could be nice, but is it really? What's the most important thing? Is being a CEO of multiple companies, which I was, the be all and end all. And no, it's not. And I became a single father, and I have 2 little girls. And what I had learned from watching my brother with this patience and this ability to listen and focus because he was limited. He couldn't do a lot of things, so he could listen
Right.
and focus. So when you're raising two little girls, and having never been a teenage girl myself, that was a little bit of a challenge. But it was learning from him to slow down, talk, validate feelings, which for type A type personality like me is like dying and going to hell. But we had to learn how to do that with my daughters. So the combination of my daughters and then my brother, who was their godfather. So he was also giving them a lot of insight and input. And it really changed the dynamic of the family, because we're very close still. The five of us immediately and the 400 cousins, still all very close. Everybody stays in touch on a regular basis, even before there was Facebook. We would touch base with each other. How are you doing? How are things going in your family, in your life, and what have you? Anytime Steve would come around, again, he was the mayor, and everybody would flock to him to talk and how's things going. I had never seen so many people wanting to travel to Arizona in my life. I mean, I love Arizona. I have a house there, but there were so many people coming. So the other thing it brought me to, Eileen, is a simple act of kindness, a word of kindness costs you nothing, nothing. But that single act of kindness can mean the world to somebody who is hurting or someone is in need, and you may not even know it. But that may give them an inspiration or motivation to pick up and continue and get through whatever the problem of the day is. And there's a lot of problems every day. It's just how you look at them. The obstacles can be stumbling blocks. It could be stones you stumble over, or they can be rocks that you build upon to climb, right? I don't know who told me that one time, but it's something I never forgot. And as I watch my brother now, 35 years post-surgery, post-accident, he's still doing very well. He's still inspiring. And now, after my parents have both died, one of the things we saw quite a bit with some of the cousins was there was this fracturing that occurred. Okay, we get together, mom and dad are still here, so we're nice to each other because we want to keep peace.
Right.
Okay, but that didn't happen. Everything became still very close. My dad died in January. I was executor of the will, and there was no issues, none, zero.
That's amazing. That's awesome. It sounds like this experience was almost like a gift to you and the family members to go into a space of appreciation and gratitude for life.
Exactly. I interviewed Gina Mazza, who yesterday on my radio show, and I think it was the first time I actually said out loud publicly that between my ex-wife leaving 18, 19 years ago and me having custody of the girls and this episode with my brother, I am grateful. I can look back and say I'm grateful for the experience, not for the event itself, but for the experience that caused me to look introspectively, to meet people like you and Kat Kavanaugh and Ariel and Gina and Laura Staley, who reinforced that. And we discovered you can't do this on your own. It's not, you cannot do it. It's impossible. And I tried, believe me. I'm gonna handle this because I can. And that didn't work at all. It was a disaster. And asking for help and reaching out for help is not a sign of weakness. And vulnerability is not a sign of weakness. Vulnerability, I learned now that I'm old, is a sign of strength, because you're smart enough to realize you can't do it all and you need help. And then the most impressive thing to me, Eileen, is when you do that, there are so many people that it will come into your life, and other doors will open for you, as I'm finding now. I was never in media ever. A year ago, Voice America kept hounding me to do a radio show. And I said, I don't want to do radio. I want to do a business show, because business shows are boring. So I said, if I'm going to do one, I want to do one on life-altering events. And so at 56 episodes, you're going to be on very soon.
Yes, I am.
And the people that I'm talking to they're enriching my life so much more than I could possibly imagine. And we're getting a lot of feedback from the 180,000 people in 30 countries that, wow, I'm going through the same thing. I didn't realize that this was as prevalent as it in fact is. And it's getting that there's people there that will help you. And sometimes you don't even have to ask for the help. You just have to be observant. Just watch, just listen, and observe and see what someone's doing, see what you're doing, and the progress that you've made, and the people you've impacted, and the other folks in the Biz Catalyst people who are just amazing in how much they're willing to give and help. And once it was, I finally could reach out and say, I can't get through this alone. Life got better.
It becomes a blessing in disguise, and something that you probably would have never expected to happen. But through those stepping stones of events, it's led you to where you are today, which is very inspiring and uplifting and encouraging for others to know that if they have a life-altering event, to look at the silver lining, to look at what's the positive that can come out of it, and to be open to that and to receive. So I think to close this out, and thank you so much for sharing that story. It's amazing, and to see where you are today, because something like that happening in a family is devastating. But it seems like there was so much, and there is so much support with all the family members and friends in the external community, that it's I believe that group consciousness that's enabled your brother to become who he has become, and you to become who you have become and still are becoming. So I want to have you give some words of wisdom for those who are watching this, that can help them along their journey in the case of,
Sure.
wherever they're at in their life.
There's two things that I say to a lot of people. The first thing I say is, don't let your circumstances define who you are. Don't be a spectator in your life. And then every week on my radio show and every article I ever write, I ended by saying, none of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And there are people out there that will show you where the rocks are. Like you. Just be looking.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you, Frank. That was amazing and awesome. And I really enjoyed hearing your story and learning of how that transpired your life and changed you and changed your brother. So we will definitely do this again. And I want to wish you the best. And we will see you later.
Thank you.
You're welcome.